Good morning, Santa Clarita. Delgado here with you on this July 8th. Happy Taco Tuesday to you. We actually have special guests in studio. We have co-news director Jade Aubuchon in with us for another special guest. Good morning, Jade.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. It's a nice Tuesday. It's going to be hot, though. It's going to be a
It
heat wave.
is indeed going to be hot, but somebody who is thankfully avoiding that heat, I hope, I don't know what the weather's like up in Sacramento, is State Senator Suzette Valladares. How are you doing today, Suzette?
Good morning, Jade. I am not avoiding the heat. The unfortunate thing about Sacramento, which is why I miss home so much, is there's a lot of rivers out here, so it's humid. It is not our lovely dry heat from Santa Clarita.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. That is the one thing that I do really like about out here is it is very, very dry, so I don't feel like I'm just swimming the moment I get out of the water. My eczema doesn't like it, but it's definitely a little bit easier to breathe. So what's going on up there?
Well, Jade, again, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an amazing opportunity to be able to talk to you and other reporters over at K-Hits to just keep you in the loop with what's going on in Sacramento. We have been knee deep in the budget here in Sacramento, where we passed our budget, the real budget, last week. I think the last time we talked, I had mentioned that we have the legislature has a June 15th constitutional deadline in order to pass a budget. We did that right before the 15th. And that was a shell. It was a framework of a budget, right? And exactly what I said was going to happen passed. I did not vote for that because there was really nothing significant in it. We came back and passed our budget junior bill last week and our official and a bunch of trailer bills as well. So our official budget, Jade, $321 billion. So to add a little context for that, our budget here in California has doubled over the last 10 years. Now, I don't know what, you can imagine, if your income doubled, you might be feeling better off, in 10 years. In California, however, we're not. We have had to the legislature, and it's really the pro tem, the governor, and the speaker have kind of had to play, some funny accounting in order to meet our 12, or in order to balance our budget, which we had a estimated $14 billion deficit. So it's just a lot of money being moved around. And really, they say that a budget is shows voters what your values are, what your priorities are. And for me, those priorities, are wrong. They cut millions of dollars for our disabled community. They allocated over $1 million to a belonging campaign, which I really don't quite understand what the purpose of spending money on a belonging campaign is when you're cutting funding from the disabled community. There were some other things that were frustrating, to say the least, in terms of not prioritizing, for me, working class people. There was no, they didn't pass our legislation or include any money to cut taxes for our service workers and industry. They're doing that at the federal level, no tax on tips. We should have done that here in California to put money back in the pockets of hardworking Californians. And the most frustrating of all, Jade, the most frustrating, you know this, I know K-Hitch knows this, voters overwhelmingly passed Prop 36 last year because we are sick of seeing the rise in crime. We want to hold criminals accountable. The non-legislative analyst office told us that we needed approximately $400 million to fully fund Prop 13, and they only allocated roughly $70 million to Prop 36. So it's completely underfunded. We're not setting up law enforcement or our courts for success when it comes to Prop 36. And, it's been a frustrating overall budget process. And then the very, very last thing here, it's been very ironic to hear my colleagues on the other side of the aisle this time around call for transparency in our budget, because the budget was dropped meaning it was negotiated and put into print 20 hours, not even a full day, before we started voting on it. And some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that were left out of those negotiations were calling for more transparency. And it was a bit ironic because, they really do exclude Republicans from the negotiation process. And it was ironic to see my colleagues finally understanding how backwards our budget process is here in California.
Which let me explain what Prop 36 is for people who may not remember. Prop 36 came up during the last election in November. And in short, let me just read the description. It allows felony charges and increases sentences for certain theft and drug crimes. So this allows for, let's say, if someone is caught for theft repeatedly, even in different counties, this is one segment of it, they can actually count them all together, and it allows for them to be felony charges instead of only misdemeanor. So it was, as you said, overwhelmingly passed. You're talking about 68% of California voters who took part in the 2024 election voted in favor of passing it, which was a great majority across the state.
Yeah, and so what that means in practical terms is after that was passed, so for years, I would hear from my law enforcement friends or, reading articles that law enforcement had kind of given up to some extent on arresting, people for theft because nothing was going to happen, right? The Prop 47 protected them. So when this was overturned, we took the handcuffs off law enforcement and allowed them to start doing their jobs, which also means law enforcement needs more resources, right? They're doing that. This is implemented. This is now law, which also means that once those criminals are arrested, then they go to court. The courts are seeing more cases. So they're doing their part of the job in the courts. And then lastly, the last component is ensuring that we have more beds for mental health and drug abuse. And again, that is probably the hardest component of Prop 36, but one of the most important, because a lot of the crime that we see happening within the homeless population, within petty theft, is related to, a lot of the times it is related to drug addiction. So courts, jails, they're already taking on this job and they need the resources to do it successfully.
Excellent. Thank you for expanding on that. I know that we kind of touched a little bit on it, but can you tell me a little bit more about the tax credit and how that factors into our budget?
The film tax credit, yes. So, we all know this in Santa Clarita. We are, Hollywood North, right? Not North Hollywood, Hollywood North. We have a huge below-the-line workforce that, live in Santa Clarita, that work in production. And then we have a growing production industry in Santa Clarita with more and more sound stages popping up to produce film, TV, even now animation. And we've been seeing really for the last decade, but really, really post-COVID, that actual production, film production being produced in California, in even our region, has been dying. And it's because other states have created film tax credits to lure Hollywood production out of California and into their states. Now, we're not only seeing that in the U.S., but we're also seeing that globally, where other countries are now also offering incentives for production to happen in their countries. And California needs to be more competitive. So we recently expanded our film tax credit to include animation, to include incentives for producing for productions outside of the 30-mile zone, so even outside of Santa Clarita. And we backed up that expansion through adding an additional $300 million to our film tax credit. So in practical terms, we're going to see more films, more production in Santa Clarita, in California, which is a good thing, but it's not over yet. As other states and other countries, have they got the formula. They're adding more to their film tax credit. We're going to have to continue to find ways to be more competitive here in California in order to keep this industry here. I mean, we are Hollywood. We for the last 100 years, this is where the most amazing movies, the most amazing talent, the most amazing scripts have come from, and we need to invest in ensuring that we continue to be the entertainment capital of the world for the next 100 years.
Excellently put. Is there anything else that you'd like your constituents to know about what you're doing up in Sacramento in the next few weeks?
Yeah, well, recently, please check out my, you can go to my Instagram at Senator Valladares. You can go to our Twitter to keep up with what we're doing with the bills that I'm working on. But most importantly, my favorite part of my job and being your senator is that I really am, and my office is a liaison between our constituents and any state agency. So if you are having issues with the DMV, with EDD, with any state agency, please reach out to my office. We are happy to help. To date, I think we have been able to secure over $200,000 in back pay, whether it was for veterans or for those that missed unemployment checks. So we can help you. Don't hesitate to reach out to my office. And I'm going to try and find the phone number here, but you can also go to Instagram, Senator Valladares, or you can find me on X as well. And my website is sr23.senate.ca.gov. Happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Once again, that website is sr23.senate.ca.gov, and you can always reach out to Senator Valladares' office at any of her social medias. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Suzette.
Thanks, Jade. Have a wonderful morning.
You as well.
Well, thank you for that. If you missed the end of that interview, I caught the tail end of that, and you can catch it in its entirety by heading on over to facebook.com or youtube.com and searching KHTS Radio.